Greetings and welcome to the 100th episode of Earthling Cinema. I am your host, Garyx Wormuloid. This week's artifact is Captain America Civil War, an incredible 20-minute fight scene with some other stuff around it. The film follows Captain America, a pipsqueak turned popsicle turned boy pout. When Cap's intramural team blows up a mostly empty hospital in Africa, they're forced to sign a multi-year deal with the UN. Cap has cold feet, but Tony Stark's feet are red hot following one conversation with a stranger.
His name was Charlie Spencer. You murdered him.
The peace accord goes off without a hitch, save for a huge explosion that kills Mufasa. Looking for someone to blame, my personal favorite pastime, the police identify Bucky, because nose goes. But he tells Captain Falcon he gave up being a terrorist for Lent.
I don't do that anymore.
Before they get ambushed by Catman, who turns out to be Mufasa's son, who turns out to be Mr. T'Challa. They're paddy-wagoned off to a white-collar prison.
You'll be provided with an office instead of a cell,
Where a vaguely European guy named Zemo reads some slam poetry. It's so bad that it makes Bucky turn into the Hulk, causing him to remember there's a dozen more Winter Soldiers. Rather than tell this reasonable story to the government, Cap casts his friends in Pixar's Finding Zemo. Not to be outdone, Stark recruits whoever's left, including a kid he saw on a Samsung Galaxy Note. They all play Super Smash until Black Widow suggests they Nintendo switch it up and play GTA, and thankfully none of the franchisable characters are hurt. Stark does a quick Google search and immediately discovers Bucky is chill, just like I knew all along. But Zemo's done some digging of his own and discovered Tony's parents were killed by Bucky. That son of a bitch. Turns out Zemo hated Avengers Age of Ultron and brought them here to kickbox. Bucky loses an arm, Cap loses his shield, and Iron Man is a billionaire, so why are you even asking? Satisfied, Zemo tries to get some cell service so he can order some za. Captain America Civil War is loosely based on the Marvel Comics series Civil War, written by Abraham Lincoln. Conceived in the age of the Patriot Act, the 7-issue run focused mostly on domestic civil liberties and taking off your shoes at the airport. But a decade later, Americans didn't give a shit about that anymore, so the film adaptation turned to international relations, questioning whether the Avengers should be allowed to do whatever the frack they want without any oversight. The debate sharpens to a point around the Sokovia Accords, designed to give the Avengers some parental supervision. The justification for this stems from a nifty piece of political theory called Westphalian sovereignty, the idea that each nation-state has the complete and exclusive power to regulate its people and their bodily functions. While this model held up in the good old days, some criticize the Westphalian model as outdated in an increasingly globalized world, where it's not clear who holds power where, and you can get pretty good sushi in Mexico. In the post-Westphalian world order, independent actors, whether they be corporations, terrorist cells, or Nicole Kidman, can sometimes wield more power than the nation-states they act in.
What would you call a group of US-based, enhanced individuals who routinely ignore sovereign borders and inflict their will wherever they choose?
In this light, the Sokovia Accords represent an effort to cram the square peg of the Avengers, a product of post-Westphalian realities, into the traditional round world order hole. The Avengers' disagreement over whether to sign the Accords reflects a further division in political theory. Stark's thumbs up to the government falls under the liberalist banner, which embraces growing interdependence among nations, while Cap's middle thumbs up views the matter through the lens of realism, which presumes states will act in their own self-interest and muck up the cooperative approach.
It's run by people with agendas, and agendas change.
That's good.
Further complicating the matter is the question of how one determines whether an action is good or something Karen's done. While the Avengers are able to stop the Phantom of the Opera from stealing some lip gloss, they harm innocent people in the process. Success? I think maybe. From a utilitarian perspective, an outcome is positive when it provides the most good for the most people. Through this lens, collateral damage can be justified, especially if it's done to Karen. This philosophy explains Tony Stark's willingness to sacrifice his autonomy and trade in his image as a daddy for his new image as a daddy.
Who's putting coffee grounds in the disposal?
Ultimately, he believes the Avengers can do more good if they accept the limitations the world expects.
I'm doing what has to be done to stave off something worse.
While Cap agrees with utilitarian concepts to an extent,
We try to save as many people as we can. Sometimes that doesn't mean everybody. But if we can't find a way to live with that, next time, maybe nobody gets saved.
He's far more driven by deontology, an ethical position that preaches adherence to rules, including one's own moral Garmin GPS.
Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say no. You move.
The film never picks a side, but one can't escape the conclusion that demonstrations of extreme force will always yield a loser. High school me, you know what I'm talking about. As does college me, and divorced me, and beating myself with a sock full of quarters until I can't hear my father's constant criticism always playing in my head me. Oh, and bowl cut me. What was I thinking? For Earthling Cinema, I'm Garyx Wormuloid. 100 episodes down, 7 to go. Until we hit 107 episodes.